Hello, everybody, and welcome again. And we are continuing here with the road to the Civil War. One of the things that you read about or heard about, learned about the other day, in terms of the war with Mexico and Texas was, the controversy. Hey, is it going to be Texas going to be a slave state or is it going to be a free state? And the constant concern with balancing the number of slave states with the number of free states, so neither side gets a advantage in Congress. Well, we already have heard about the Missouri Compromise before. Now, another compromise, a very, very significant one, called the Compromise of 1850. And it did five main things. And remember, in a compromise, no one gets everything that they want. So you're going to have some people who are going to be satisfied and others that are not going to be quite so satisfied. So the first thing, California becomes a free state, non slave state. The second thing is that Texas enters as a slave state. And remember all the effort that was made in terms of making sure that none of the land that was, acquired from Mexico was going to be slave state, but it turned out that Texas was. Um, Texas also had its border set to its current location and received $10 million for the loss of the at the time was called New Mexico Territory. Part of this area right here was also part of Texas, and Texas got that $10 million in compensation for losing that property. The third part, the territories. And again, this means that they are not states yet, but the territories. So first you're a territory, and then you can apply for statehood. The territories of New Mexico and Utah were organized on what we call popular sovereignty, a very, very important concept. And that means that the states decide for themselves. The people decide, popular sovereignty. And so that would, of course, be a vote. You vote yes, no for slavery. So that was sort of up in the air. The fugitive slave law was strengthened, and that is one of the things that is just one of the worst possible rule that you could make. And what it basically said was that if a slave escapes from territory where slavery is legal to a free state, before, okay, great, you're free now. There's no such thing as slavery, so how can you be a slave? Um, well, now it said that someone could come and catch you up in the northern states and bring you back down if you were a slave. Now, sure, you got to go before a judge, and the judge would determine whether or not you were a slave or a free person. The catch is that the judge got paid $5 to rule that you were free, and got paid $10 to rule that you were a slave. So once again, we see money influencing, in this case, politics. The fifth thing was the slave trade was abolished in Washington, D.C. So you could say on the surface, well, look, California's a free state, and there's no other really, slave state. I mean, Texas goes into canceled out, and then New Mexico and Utah, well, they can vote. It's hard to say who won, but it probably would favor the pro-slavery people at this point, especially because this just outraged people. People were very mad in the North. Well, it goes on a little bit. Franklin Pierce, who really will actually push forward the desire for a civil war. Of course, trying to avoid a civil war, we should hope, but even the best intentions sometimes go astray. So Franklin Pierce won the presidential election, and he was a big sections rights, which really is states' rights kind of thing. Hey, in this area, we should be able to make our own rules, and in another area, you make the rules that are best for you. And so sections meant that each part of the country should be able to decide for themselves how they wanted to live, and it's basically popular sovereignty. Pierce did support the Compromise of 1850 and the Fugitive Slave Act. Now, the support of the Fugitive Slave Act is what really, really angered Northerners. They really thought that the Fugitive Slave Act was absolutely atrocious. And the support of the Fugitive Slave Act came to really, I guess, the culmination in this case of Anthony Burns, an individual, a single person, obviously. But this individual case really came to sort of signify what was just so terrible about the Fugitive Slave Act. And Anthony Burns was a former slave that had escaped to Boston. And he thought he was safe. Hey, in Boston, it's a focal point, the main area of the abolitionist movement. So he thought, hey, what place is better than this? Well, under the Fugitive Slave Act, they were sent. People were sent to catch him, and they was held in a local jail before the judge would rule on it. And there was such an amazing outcry from the people of Boston and areas around that all sorts of extra troops had to be brought in, a lot of extra security had to be brought in, and it ended up costing about $100,000, and that was in those times a lot of money to return him to his so-called owner. And this being a multiple major slap in the face to the people that were against slavery. First of all, they're against slavery. You're putting someone into a condition of slavery. But second of all, you spent $100,000 of tax money for one person. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And so the ultimate effect of the case of Anthony Burns was that it helped to transform many Northerners from, let's say, we're moderates, meaning, okay, yeah, slavery is bad and we should vote against it, but to extremists opposing slavery, meaning, hey, whatever we have to do to get rid of slavery, we need to do it because this is a terrible, terrible situation going on here. A couple other things that help contribute to the debate. As we know, eventually, obviously, Hawaii does become part of the United States. Cuba will become part of the United States for a very short period of time after the Spanish-American War, but at the time, it failed. These ideas failed in terms of annexing these places because, again, the debate of over slavery. You had Cuba was a slaveholding society. And so if you want to add it to the country or annex it, you met with great resistance from Northerners. Hawaii, the exact opposite, a non-slaveholding society, and you met great resistance from Southerners. So there was attempts to even, while all this is going on, to continue to add territories that were slave or not slave state. And again, the reason why it's important is because adding an additional free or slave state territory, whatever, would upset this delicate balance that all these compromises were trying to achieve in order to prevent war. Final thing here, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and this is before they were states. There's still territories here. You had Senator Stephen Douglas, it probably sounds familiar with the Lincoln-Douglas debates, proposed that the issue of slavery be decided in Illinois, be decided by popular sovereignty, sorry, not Illinois, in the territory of Kansas, Nebraska. He was from Illinois, that's why I said that. Now, this was going back on a deal that was already made. If you remember, the Missouri Compromise said, look, the southern border, anything north of the southern border of Missouri, that's free state. This is already decided. There's no question. Popular sovereignty, there's no need to take a vote. The law's already decided. We made this deal. We all agreed. Missouri Compromise. It's been in effect for a while. And now Senator Douglas from Illinois, an outsider, wants to come in and change this? Well, if the Kansas-Nebraska Act went through, the Missouri Compromise would have to be repealed. Again, Northerners very, very, very upset. And eventually, all this led to the emergence of the Republican Party. Now, again, this is the 1800s, mid-1800s, and, what is now the Republican Party is very different from what it was then. Same with the Democratic Party. They've gone through lots and lots of changes. So don't think of modern-day Republican or modern-day Democrat, but this is the origins of it, of the Republican Party in this case. And so you have the aggressive enforcement of the Fugitive Slave Act, as seen in the case of Anthony Burns, and the repeal of the Missouri Compromise. This sort of led Northerners to say, uh-oh, we don't seem to be winning this sort of a battle for, to prevent slavery from spreading. What are we going to do? And it led to the formation of a new political party based in the North, and that is the Republican Party. All right. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed.